A few days ago, it was new chain day and new cassettes for Veronica's bike and indoor trainer. But it wasn't giving her that new chain feeling, that smooth, crisp changing, as you'd expect with a new drivetrain. A closer inspection of the rings, these need replacing. But it wasn't a visual inspection that told us that these were worn out, because you can't see the standard shark's tooth that it usually appears on these. They look pretty good. But once we do a bit of a grab test and push down on the chain itself, you can see it just not quite meshing. We'll show you that closer in just a few moments. But what we're going to replace them with is the Praxis Works rings, which I've ordered. These are not the S-Works rings that are on here, but they're just as good. What we're going for is the 110 BCD, which fits this Spider, 5236, same configuration as this. So they should be a straight swap out, swap back on, and it should be smooth sailing for Vaughn, indoors and out. So how to tell if your chain rings do need replacing once you've got a new chain on there? Well, hopefully the bike mechanic will do that for you and you don't have to worry about it. But if you want to check yourself, here's the visual inspection way to actually see if your chain rings are wearing out when you put a new chain on. So here are the rings themselves closer up. They don't look too bad, but if you actually grab the chain from the inside there, you can see the chain move here and here. You can see that movement? That's really not ideal. And if we lock the back chainring by putting our hand on the freewheel and pushing down, you can see some movement there. Just a slight bit of movement of the chain as you push down. Now that's just with my hand. You can imagine the force there with your foot pushing down on that. There's going to be a lot of movement. So that's a little ring. Definitely needs replacing there. And on the big ring. The big ring again, the grab test, you can see there I can pull the chain off the rings by quite an amount, indicating that these rollers here aren't quite meshing with the teeth all the way around. And also the push test, there's only a little bit of movement there, given there's a lot of contact points there. It's not moving a lot, not as much as we saw in the little ring, but still enough to need it changed. So we'll take the crank set off to replace the rings the easier way. A quick look at both rings we've just pulled off the bike there. The 52 tooth, not a lot of shark toothing. That looks okay. And it is the little ring that's showing most wear through these teeth here. So what happens, as we saw on the bike, when the new chain tries to mesh with that, there's movement. And that's not ideal. Okay. Out with the old and in with the new. Let's have a closer look at these rings themselves. They can be configured in two ways. Traditional 5-arm mount, no hidden bolts, or with the 4-arm with the hidden bolt behind the 5th arm, the crank arm. So we'll go this configuration for Veronica's setup. Let's have a look at what's in the box. Rings themselves and the kit for the pins. We've got, now this is the drop pin that goes behind the crank arm. Not quite sure what size. Let's have a look at the existing drop pin Vaughn has. It's probably the longer one on her existing crank. So next where it's crank, it sort of bends out a little bit further. Yes, we'll use the longer one. So that needs to go in. We'll put the shorter one away, and there's the plug for the other hole. So to quickly install these drop pin and the extra plug, we will flip this over. Okay, Vaughn's crank arm's going to align here. That needs to face outwards. And plug pin over this side. So the task of the drop pin there is to stop the chain, the crank arm is here, to stop the chain dropping between the chainring and the crank itself if you ever flip off the big ring on the outside. Okay, drop pin installed, let's have a look at the rest. It is super evident what the difference is when we put these two side by side. You can see here, that's a nice scoop with a squared off top, and these are all shark's teeth. Chalk and cheese when you put them side by side like that. So as we saw before, when we put the new chain on here, we have that side to side movement. And then when we put the new chain on something like this, it's locked in tight. There's absolutely no chain movement there whatsoever. So that's as clear as day why this one wasn't working too well with the new chain. Let's get this and this on the bike. Okay, that's half the job done. Now we need to torque these crank bolts up to 8 Newton meters to make sure the quark is happy. So there we are, after about 10 minutes of work, we have new chain rings on Veronica's bike. Those S-Works bolts are a little difficult with the flat-headed screwdriver required on the other side, but we've torqued them up to 8 Newton meters, which should be as per spec for the Quark Spider. We shouldn't need to recalibrate that, but if Von sees any wonky numbers or it doesn't match up to the Wahoo Kicker or Neo or whatever else we have here, we will do another static hanging weight test. I'll put a link below to the video we've done on this previously. So over to the grab test on the chain to see if it really has made a difference. Absolute chalk and cheese. And when we press down, there's hardly any movement at all. Now for the final test, we'll jump on and do a quick spin and make sure it changes up. So there we are, job complete. Happy bike, happy wife, happy life. These third-party Praxis rings save me about $100 on the branded rings, and they will do the job just as well. If you're ever in doubt, go to your local bike store and have a chat about what options there are available. Rather than going with branded things, you can actually go third-party or different brands that will do the job just as well and save you a little bit of money as well. There we are. I can't wait to see how Von goes on these new rings. It was changing just fine then. I'm sure she'll be happy with those. Alrighty, thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.